This instantly recognizable score hails from John Carpenter's 1978 horror classic Halloween, the film which crystallized many of the tropes of the slasher subgenre, which popularized in the 1970s and 80s. But to understand how films like Halloween came to be, we must look back at its roots in the Italian subgenre of giallo. The word giallo, meaning yellow in Italian, references the yellow paperback translated crime and thriller books which began publishing as early as 1929. The first giallo film can be traced back to Mario Bava's 1963 The Girl Who Knew Too Much, about an American tourist who witnesses a murder and tries to find the killer, fearing she might be the next victim. Giallo films famously featured villainous masked criminals who stalked and preyed on beautiful women, resulting in gruesome and violent death sequences. The themes of sexuality, alienation, and paranoia can be traced back to the horror film trailblazer Alfred Hitchcock. And while there could be an entire video essay on giallo and its tropes, to get to the heart of the slasher, we must fast forward to 1974 and one of the films that kickstarted the slasher subgenre in America. Tobe Hooper's 1974 film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, following in the footsteps of the giallo, follows a masked murderer Leatherface, brutally murdering a group of young adults. It is here, in the unbearable Texas heat of Hooper's Chainsaw Massacre, where the tropes of the slasher genre begin to lay their roots in American cinema, most notably the idea of the final girl. Typically the least sexualized in nature, especially in comparison with her friends, the final girl is the only survivor in the gruesome face-off with the masked serial killer. Chainsaw Sally is an initial example of the final girl trope that cemented in 1978 in Carpenter's Halloween, and that is a woman who must contend with her virtuous and unsexualized nature through facing and defeating a killer. She is paranoid within her small town, a space that typically resonates with audiences as a safe place. The final girl is resourceful, intelligent, not completely feminized unlike her other friends, and she is rewarded with her virginity and lack of promiscuity with survival. However, she must go to hell and back to get there. With a budget of around $320,000 and a box office gross total of $70 million, Halloween proved to film studios that extremely low-budget films could gain large audiences, and it was then that the slasher film arrived to the 1980s with a bang. Halloween launched a subgenre that would resonate with the 1980s white middle class who feared outsiders entering their crumbling suburbia. The 1980s were flooded with sequels and expanding film series. However, with every new iteration of Halloween or Friday the 13th, the slasher film strayed further and further away from its original blueprint, resulting in the new postmodern horror that was self-aware and instead relied on subverting the genre tropes that were so ingrained in the 1980s.
What'd you say? That's why she always outsmarted the killer in the big chase scene at the end. Only virgins can do that. Don't you know the rules?
What rules?
You don't... Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.